What? Calendar Man? Top 5 best Calendar Man stories? Are you kidding, Mr. Rogues? He doesn't have any good stories, you know that. Well, that's where you're wrong, kid. If you dig deep enough, you'll find that even the Calendar Man has 5 stories worth reading. I know I say that all the time about digging deep enough. Well, for the Calendar Man, it's really true. You gotta dig real deep to even find any Calendar Man stories to begin with. You don't have to do that though, as I've already done it, and here are the 5 best ones. Number 5. A caper a day keeps the Batman at bay. We start off the list with the Calendar Man's second appearance from Batman 312, published in 1979. The story in question was written by Len Wein and drawn by Walter Simonson. So to be honest, there's nothing spectacular about this one. But we gotta have 5 stories, so I had to include it. I mean, it's a good enough story. Basically, it's about Calendar Man pulling off another crime spree, and Batman stops him. That's it. But it's good fun. This time around, Calendar Man pulls off a caper a day, centering each crime around the names of the weekdays, like robbing the Gotham Planetarium on Monday, dressed like this, since Monday is named after the moon, and robbing a museum dressed like a Viking on Wednesday, since that day is named after Odin, the Norse god, and so on. You get the picture. And yes, this was back in the days when Calendar Man wore a different costume for each crime to go with that date's theme. Anyway, like I said, it's good fun. A neat Bronze Age tale, nothing more really. But that's not a bad thing, sometimes you just want a fun romp. Calendar Man really puts up a good fight against Batman too, even putting him out of commission for a couple of days. So yeah, this was before writers began portraying the character as a loser. As in this story, he's just as big of a threat as the Joker or the Penguin. Imagine that. Different times. Number 4. What Happened Was... Written by Paul Jenkins and drawn by Omar Francia, this is a 3-part story from the digital series Batman Legends of the Dark Knight. Yes, that's how desperate I am. I'm pulling stuff from an obscure digital-only comic series. Anyway, it was published across issues 30 to 32 of the series in 2013. In the story, Calendar Man crashes a ball game at the Gotham Stadium on the 4th of July to celebrate with a bunch of fireworks. Unusually explosive fireworks. Why is he doing this? Well, according to himself, he wants to give the people of Gotham a history lesson. He wants to simulate the events that gave America its independence and teach the people of today what their ancestors went through. Or something deranged like that. It's a really nice motivation for the crazy Calendar Man, as it isn't about money for once. Anyway, each part of this 3-part story retells the same events through different perspectives. The first through the eyes of the spectators, the second through Calendar Man's perspective, and the last shows what actually happened through the eyes of Batman. A really fun and interesting way to tell a story, as none of the different versions match each other. Calendar Man's version is easily the best, as in his story, he was actually the good guy and tried to stop Batman from blowing the stadium up. And the hilarious thing is, he actually seems to believe in it. It's a lot of delusional fun. Another plus point this overlooked comic gets is for actually using the modern Calendar Man. You know what I mean? He actually commits a crime. He isn't just sitting in a cell in Arkham spouting cryptic nonsense. Yes, this is a very rare occurrence of the modern Calendar Man actually being out and about and being a supervillain. It's worth reading just for that. Number 3. Broken Dates, The First Day of Spring, Day of Doom. Another 3-parter, this one was published across Batman issues 384 to 385 and Detective 551 in 1985. The writer was Doug Mensch and the artists were Rick Hoberg and Pat Broderick. This is Calendar Man's 3rd appearance. In it, a bunch of mobsters want to get rid of Batman. When don't they? So they put out word to the Monitor to hire an assassin. And the Monitor, for some reason, hires the Calendar Man. I don't know why. Anyway, Calendar Man isn't sure he wants to accept the job though. You see, he doesn't really want Batman dead. Batman is the only fun he has. Challenging the Batman is what committing crime is all about. If the Bat's dead, what's the point with continuing the Calendar Man gig? Eventually though, he decides to accept the job since the money is simply too alluring. Greedy bastard. However, he's not just gonna off the Batman and be done with it. No, he's gonna put on the most fun challenge they've ever had and give their rivalry a smashing send-off. He's gonna lead up to the Batman's death with a series of holiday-themed crimes. What else? Giving the hero a sporting chance to stop him before the fatal finale. This weird love-hate view Calendar Man has of Batman is what makes this comic so interesting and good. You are of course thinking this is exactly like two much bigger Batman villains, the Joker and the Riddler. But the thing is, when this comic came out, this idea hadn't really been explored a whole lot with those two characters, especially not with the Riddler. For them, it would be fleshed out a lot more a bit later. So, Calendar Man was actually first in being obsessed with the game with Batman. Well, he was the first to truly have this idea fleshed out. Calendar Man was, in other words, ahead of his time and the original, so to speak. That's kinda weird. Nobody remembers that now. This was also the first comic to explore Calendar Man as a character and give him motivations and depth. Definitely a must-read for anyone interested in Julian Day. By the way, this was the first comic to name him that too. Number 2. New Year, New You. This story is from the holiday special DC put out last Christmas, New Year's Evil, a holiday-themed anthology issue featuring the villains. The Calendar Man story was written by Christos Engage and drawn by Carl Mostert. I'm sure some of you remember my review of it. In that video, I praised this story and may even have said it was the best Calendar Man story ever written. Well, not quite, as it ended up, but almost, very close, number 2. This story takes the old tired trope of Julian being locked up in Arkham and actually does something interesting with it. It actually does something. It also tackles the misguided idea that Julian is a loser villain. So in this story there's a new doctor in Arkham, a very ambitious one, who wants to write a series of books on the asylum's more infamous residents, like the Joker and Two-Face. He's basically in it to make a name for himself. However, much to his chagrin, he's stuck with treating what he considers predictable losers, such as the Calendar Man. And very unprofessionally, he lets Julian know how he feels. Julian naturally doesn't take too kindly to being insulted, and decides to manipulate a riot on New Year's Eve, ruining the doctor's planned New Year, New You therapy party. Yes, the Calendar Man starts a riot in Arkham, and he does it all with very clever manipulation. A story that proves Julian isn't a lame loser, and can in fact be very dangerous, just as long as the writer wants him to be. And now for the greatest Calendar Man story of them all. Number 1. All the Deadly Days. From Batman 80-page Giant issue 3 published in 2000, this story was written by Chuck Dixon and drawn by a whole slew of different artists, including Joe Staton, Graham Nolan, and Bill Sienkiewicz. So in this one, the Calendar Man is at it again, pulling off another holiday-themed crime. What else is there to do? As always, he's caught by Batman and sent to Arkham. This time, there's a catch though. He's not up for parole until after New Year's Eve. That is, New Year's Eve of 1999. The Calendar Man is going to spend the turn of the millennium locked up in Arkham, the biggest, most important singular date of his life. Whatever plans he had for that day, and he did have plans, will go unfulfilled. That, combined with a new cruel therapy technique, sends Julian completely off the deep end. Once he's finally out on the streets again, he sets in motion the biggest plans of his criminal career. Sure, he missed the turn of the millennium, but he's gonna create a little Y2K of his own, when he plunges Gotham into complete chaos with electromagnetic pulses. It's the deadliest Calendar Man has ever been. Seriously, it is. That ain't just hyperbole. In this comic, Calendar Man practically creates a little no man's land all on his own. I don't really know why this comic didn't do more for the character. This is a comic that treats him completely seriously and as a major threat. He'd make even the Joker jealous with all the chaos he creates. Plus, it's a great character study too that explores him and his bizarre obsession with dates. Basically, It's a perfect Calendar Man story. We get to know him better, and he's portrayed as a force to be reckoned with. What more can you ask for? A real shame this comic went by completely unnoticed. I mean, I'm assuming no one read it, as it didn't really help Calendar Man's rep at all, plus you never hear anyone talk of it. The only flaw I can see with it is Calendar Man's new costume. I'm all for giving him a new costume as the old one is kinda poor, but this one isn't that great either, and it's far too similar to Anarchy's getup. But other than that, a perfect story. And Chuck Dixon once again proves how great he is with Batman villains. And there you have it, the 5 best Calendar Man stories. I never thought I'd make this video, but the 5 stories were there, they were out there. Anyway, as always, remember, Arkham Asylum awaits you in the next video.